everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. I'm Gus Kattengell, along with Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com, and Mr. Rod Walker, columnist for the Times-Picayune and the New Orleans Advocate. Sir, we got a lot to get into. First off, thank you for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
back
for
on
sure.
Twice in one season.
I know,
man.
you hit your quota. No, we love having you on. And especially now, man, 8-4 in the last 12 games. It's nice to actually talk really good basketball stuff, not just, hey, we're trying to be positive. This is legit things. And let's just start with last night's win over the Mavericks. And it was a 129-111 victory, 6 players in double figures. You had a little history from Yves Missi. Crowd felt nice, man. And more importantly, that's a team that you had 3 previously close games to. And call me crazy, but I thought the Pelicans looked like the better team by far, overall on the court. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought it was a really overall, I thought the Pelicans played really well. Kind of got off to a little slow start, but got going. And that was their 5th straight home win, which kind of snuck up on me. I didn't really realize that. I looked back and like, wait a minute, they've won. They've strung some wins together, which is what you want to see this time of the year. And this team, they're not like there are some bad teams in the NBA, but this team is like really playing well and trying to win, and you like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, I've talked about this all season, but the defense was the thing that stood out to me maybe the most from the game last night. The Pelicans had 12 block shots, which is the most they've had in a game. Yves Missi had 5, which tied his career high. They limited Dallas to 42% from the field, which was a really positive stat as well. And I mean, this is kind of a continuation of one of the, you mentioned 8-4 in the last 12 games. They're 8-5 since the All-Star break. They were 11th in offense, 18th in defense. They've been, since the All-Star break, they're 11th in offense, 18th in defense. Before the All-Star break, they were 25th and 27th. So to go from, I know it's still slightly below average, but to go from 27th in defense to 18th in defense, I thought the game against the Mavericks was one of the better examples of just so much more disruptive. And even though they didn't have Dejounte Murray for that game, and he's been a big factor on the defensive end, they were able to really hold the Mavericks down, which was a big plus.
It's amazing what a healthy roster can do for a team, right? I mean,
yeah.
They kind of figured it out once they got healthy. So
I think a healthy roster and also minutes played, right? You're starting to see, I thought obviously before Dejounte Murray missed last night's game, it was interesting. The last 5 games, he's totaled 111 points, 32 rebounds, 25 assists. You're seeing the impact he did. We're going to talk a little bit about Houston, but in some of those games, you see what he brings to the table. And I guess what I'm trying to get at the overall picture, we're seeing improvement, right? I can ask you about Yves Missi. I can ask you about Zion. I can ask you about the other guys. We're seeing this team improve, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And I think what really helps this team is that they were counting on those rookies like Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen to start, and now you're getting to bring them off the bench, so they're being even more productive in that role, I feel like. And obviously DeJounte's made a huge impact on this team, and he's kind of just settled them down a little bit on offense. They just they look a little bit more cohesive with him running the show.
You mentioned how, I mean, I think most people, maybe not Mavericks fans, but people in general watch that game would say the Pelicans were the better team, and it was I think the word I used was dominant. It was a pretty dominant game. They won every quarter. I wasn't ever really that nervous, even if Dallas made a few runs and that kind of thing. But I mean, another thing that stands out in terms of just what the Pelicans have done over an extended stretch of time is now they are consistently beating some of the bottom tier teams, some of the teams with losing records. One of the facts that I looked at was, besides the 2 games against the Bucks, for some reason Milwaukee was a big problem for New Orleans recently, but besides those 2 games, the Pelicans haven't lost to a team with a losing record. Since January 16th, they lost a game at the Pacers. So, I mean, you're talking a 2-month stretch now where they have 3 losses against teams with losing records. And besides those, they've been able to win every time. And a lot of those have been pretty convincing double-digit wins. So, I mean, that was another thing. They keep putting together kind of strings of stretches where they're showing that they're better than some of the teams that are at the bottom.
And as a result of that, they climbed to 12th in the Western Conference now. I mean, technically they're tied with the Mavericks, but they've beat them 3 out of 4 times this season. So I mean, this is a team that they're not going to catch Portland, I guess, for the 10th spot, but I mean, they have a legit chance to at least climb up to 11th in the Western Conference and be the last team out as far as the play-in.
I think they're all signs of improvement, right? I mean, there's only 13 games left, but at the same time, you're like, man, if there was a few more, maybe you can get that to your point. And I think those are all good and positive signs. If I'm a Pels fan, if I'm somebody who's covering his team, How do I judge and rate Borrego and his staff? How do I judge what players to keep? Are they improving? Are they getting better? And to Jim's point, you're struggling against teams that were in and around you at the bottom of the standings. You didn't know if you could win or not. And to the point to where now our next topic, how do you do against teams playing playoff basketball or teams that are in a playoff race? Can you sort of beat them? It ended with Houston before they got back home here, obviously, last night. But you go back to that road trip, the 3 wins, bottom feeders, right? And the 3 losses were playoff teams. It was the Lakers, it was the Suns, and it was the Clippers who we're going to see here for 2 straight days. But when you add that Houston game, the fact that you're in the game, if not leading late in the game or in the fourth quarter, what does that tell you about this team?
It tells you a lot, man. It just tells you how far they've come. And, I mean, you talking about the Houston game. You even back to that Lakers game. That's another game that I feel like they let that one slip away too. So, I mean, yeah, they're playing really well against some good teams. And obviously they get 3 more big tests this week.
Another game from that road trip too was the Phoenix game that they only lost that game by 2 and came within inches of having a steal in the last few seconds and maybe a chance to tie the game or win it with a shot before the buzzer. So they have shown, over and over again that even when they're playing against the better teams that they've been in those games. And I know we're going to have a stretch coming up where they're going to be tested a ton. I think the Houston game too in particular was frustrating because it was a positive that you were able to be competitive, but to me, you win that game and it's like, okay, in the last couple months, you've won in San Antonio, you've won in Minnesota, you've had a bunch of other good wins. To be able to add that to the resume, I think would have been great just from a confidence standpoint, or just being able to show people like, here's another good team that they beat, but obviously it didn't end the way we wanted it to.
Yeah.
You're a columnist. So you formulate an opinion based off of a handful of different things and then kind of, hey, this is why I think that. When you see what they're doing, does it make you rethink, or does it make you shape your thought as to how this team moves forward and with who moves forward?
Yeah, I think we've seen what this team can be. I would have loved to have seen this team with Dejounte Murray the entire season. I think that would have made a huge difference. And I think that if that happens, I think we're talking at least, I'm pretty sure we're talking play in, maybe even, top, I don't know if they're top 6, but I think they're definitely in that 7 to 10 range. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic now than I was, 2 months ago or whatever. So I think Borrego has them going in the right direction. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. They may have their own guy already picked out. I don't know. But I do think Borrego has done a really good job with this team. And you can just see, like, if he had this team through an off season and got to implement his stuff instead of trying to kind of fix things on the fly, I think, I think he could get the job done.
Yeah, because that was the last thing we chatted about the last podcast. If you could turn things around, or if you could kind of reshape your opinion after the All-Star break. Is it continuing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Rod mentioned that his opinions changed over the last couple of months. I mean, I think you could even say over the last couple of weeks since Dejounte has come back. I mean, the big thing for him, I'm sure we're going to probably talk about him a little bit more, and I have a mention of him later in the show as well. But to me, he looks so much more like what I expected him to look like when they traded for him 2 years ago. And I'm amazed. I'm looking forward to asking some of the other players about this, but just the fact that he looks physically so good after he'd been out for 13 months is kind of incredible. I realize like he has fresh legs and he, had been out as long as he had, whereas some of the other players have played 50, 60 games. It's a little different, but still, I mean, the factor of being out that long, it's just stunning to me that he looks physically the way he has, and that he's been the best player in some recent games as well. I
asked Borrego last week after, I can't remember which game it was, but I was like, are you surprised that he looks this good this soon? And Borrego was like, he didn't really know what to expect. I don't think any of us knew what to expect. I mean, we just kind of wanted to see it, and we have seen it. And like Jim said, this is a version of him that we didn't get to see last year as a rookie. He didn't quite get to this level, but now he is really doing what we thought he could do for this team.
I don't think I'm speaking out of context here, but I think we all imagine and assume, hey, we'd like to see if he can still play and where he's at, and kind of maybe help you make a decision whether on his future here or anywhere else. I think that's kind of where we're hoping for, right? Because we didn't know where he was going to be like. And look, you get paid professionally to use words. I make them up. Field generaling is what I kept saying on the air. And here he is field generaling. And we saw him field generaling that win against Toronto. the viral moment, man. They had this place going. He's given this team a bit of an edge. We saw him almost will this team to a win in Houston and other places. That's not, to Jim's point, what I think any of us were expecting. We were like, hey, can this guy play? Mm-hmm. Can he be used? Or does he want to? I don't know. I mean, where's his joy? And you wrote about, you can see it. I mean, you can't fake what we're seeing.
Right. And even if you can't see it, Dejounte will let you know it. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, he had a tweet. I mean, he basically just came out and said, I found he used an expletive, some language we can't use on the podcast, but he talked about his joy that he found. And I mean, every time we talk to him, he talks about his love of the game and how it was kind of taken away from him last year. So for him to get that back, you can just see it. I mean, unfortunately he only gets 20-something games this year. I mean, he'd love to have all 82 if he could. So yeah, I mean, he's glad to be back, and the team, you could tell they just needed a guy like that. And I think this team always needed a guy with an edge. I think when you even look back at the best team they've had in recent years, you go back to that Rondo year, you kind of need a guy like that to kind of get you. It just gives you something that you kind of need, especially if you're going to be like a legitimate playoff team. You got to have a guy like that.
It's interesting too with the Achilles injury in particular, whether it's Jason Tatum or some of the other players that were out for a long time. The entire time the player's out, you say to yourself or to other people, like, okay, when he comes back, we're going to wait a while. We're going to give him some grace because we know that he's not going to look like him. He's not going to be 100% right away. Let's calm down on trying to evaluate someone. And then it's just like, well, never mind. He looks like even better than he did last season. I think some of it too last season was just the disjointed nature of the season for him, that he was away from the team in preseason. He comes back, he breaks his hand in the first game of the season. He comes back, they're like, I can't remember what it was, 4-16 or whatever. And I think to some extent, without putting words in his mouth, I would think if you're in his shoes, you're kind of like, I need to be the one I've been the one that's been out this whole time where they've been losing games after they won the opener with him. I'm going to be the one that's going to turn this around. And it felt a little bit like he was forcing things sometimes. And he also wasn't in a rhythm, I think, from being out as long as he had been. Yeah. So just to see the turnaround of the way that he's played. He had so many games last season, too, where he had a ton of turnovers, like more than we've ever seen in his whole career. And you watched him play in Atlanta and San Antonio, and you were like, you knew this is the level of player. And it didn't seem like we saw that last season. So just overall, it's just incredible to me that it feels like through the first 7 or 8 games that he played, you can almost throw out the whole idea of like, no, we need to give him time. We need to not be harsh in our evaluation. Mm-hmm. There's like nothing harsh to evaluate about the way he's played because he's been so good.
Yeah, he was started off on like a minute restrictions. He was around 24 minutes, somewhere around there. And then all of a sudden he went up to 30, 31. So, I mean, I think he's fine. It just kind of shows you how far these doctors are in getting players back ready, because back in the day, I mean, Achilles, we were kind of like, this guy going to even play again, period. And here he is. I think in some of those first games, like I remember the game he went in for the layup and missed it. Like
Phoenix,
It's like, almost like he was really not sure about his explosiveness. And then next game he came back with the thunderous dunk, and I was like, okay, this guy's back now. So
you know what?
It's just good to see that.
You just said it. Let's give the flowers, because whether it's Zion or Trey and a lot of players this year, I thought the staff overall in this team, and look, it's been a topic the last several years. You can't avoid it, right? Of players missing so much time. I felt that when players do go out, they come right back and they're ready to go. I felt that with a lot of players this year. And I think it's interesting, as you were just saying that, Jim, something popped in my head, and I really we'll quickly just touch on this. I think with Dejounte coming back this year too, you have 3 main players that may be taking another step of maturity here. I think Trey's a better player than he was last year. Coach Borrego talked about it after the win yesterday, what Zion's doing this year in the huddle. Hey, saying, let's go to another player. And I think the addition of Sadiq Bey to that starting lineup. So Dejounte is taking the floor with legit vets, guys he can trust and that are playing better and have played together for most of the season. So I think it's a little different situation in last year, where I don't know if that backcourt and that front court have mixed well. They were still trying to see if Messi and all that. I think he's plopped in to a group of guys that can handle it better.
Yeah, I think so. And I think him just getting to watch this entire season. I mean, Dejounte's like a smart guy, so he kind of knows what he needs to do and what role he needs to play. And I think he was just able to step right in. And he's a vocal guy. Like he's not afraid to talk and say, hey, this is what we need to be doing. And the guys listen to him.
It feels a little bit too like they don't have anything to lose. When he came back, it's like there's no pressure. I mean, even if you think you want to save the season, you can't really do that because, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't agree with that assessment because he was still talking about making the play-in. But realistically, it just felt like you're playing with house money. Where the season was at that point, it's like just go out there and play free. And he's extremely motivated because he had to sit out for so long. So, and you're playing against some of these teams that aren't going all in on winning. So, but I think that's part of why like getting that Toronto win was great because you're playing against a team that has a ton to play for and you beat them in an impressive fashion.
I know it's a couple. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I credit Borrego for a lot of that too because I mean this team, I mean most teams in this situation. I mean, you can say, yeah, let's try to win, but they really don't really do it. But Borrego instills some of these guys to make them continue to fight like they have, and I think he deserves some credit for that.
I know it's about 5 or 6 months away, but we saw it in a couple of other training camps. Jose Alvarado kind of going up against, Dejounte or other point guards in that battle. I think Fears has really benefited. Jeremiah Fears from having Dejounte Murray around. You can just see it. And that move to that bench, and both of those guys, they're very similar, how they kind of carry themselves, very similar on the court, explosives. Those could be some fun battles, if Jeremiah kind of does what Jose did, where he's like, this is my unit, it's my second unit, I'm going to try to go beat you and stuff. Those could be some really competitive stuff, and I think could really help each other moving forward.
And I think just getting, with the improvements that Jeremiah's made, not the thing that stands out a lot of times with him is his scoring, but he's improved in so many other areas now that you're getting 48 minutes of a point guard that's playing efficiently and helping the team. So between those two guys, I think that position has made a big jump.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of big jump, I want to see the next jump on this team, and that's, Jim, the next 8 games against playoff teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be all teams. We've talked about this a little bit before that. I think we're going to get a lot more out of some of these games where they're playing against, they have the Clippers twice here coming up. They have the Cavs on the weekend. And then they have I think a really interesting East Coast road trip where they play the Knicks, the Pistons, and then the Raptors again. So, and then come back here and play Houston. So over this stretch, I mean, you're playing against teams that we're going to probably drill down more on the specifics when we get to these games. But I mean, these teams all have something significant to play for.
Talking to the guys about it, they talked about this being a measuring stick for them. They want to go out and prove that, that they're not going to make the playoffs, but they want to prove that they're a team that can play with these kind of teams. And I think they're going to actually, show that. And I think this is a team that, like, they're not going to get into playoffs, but if they did, it'll be a team that other teams wouldn't really want to. You kind of want to stay away from because they're dangerous with all the weapons they have. You see how good they've gotten on offense and defensively. Obviously, they're picking up too. So I think they just want to. This is kind of like their playoffs here, and I think that's how they're going to treat these the rest of the season.
I know there's similarities, and obviously we're in the building, but when you see the logo with the fleur-de-lis, I know it was only 5 wins, but along the lines, because you covered them too, the Saints winning and playing the way they did and being competitive towards the end of the year has people excited this offseason for a team that didn't win a half dozen games. And you have a team that's not going to make the playoffs, but we're sitting here and talking about, man, I can't wait to see this. I can't wait to see them play these playoff teams, even though they're not going to be a postseason team. Real quickly, before we get into some specifics and the beginning of the week awards or end of the week awards from Jim, man, I think it is big news. Expansion talks. The commissioner coming out and saying, hey, 28, 29 is kind of what we're targeting. The reports are out there. It's Vegas, it's Seattle that are going to be the expansion teams. One team's going to move to the East, more than likely Minnesota or Memphis. But overall, what do you think of those expansion talks?
I think it'll be exciting. I mean, I think both of those are, especially Seattle. I mean, Seattle back in the 70s, I mean, they were like, really when they won the championships, and then they got to the finals in the 90s and with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. And I think it's a city that loves basketball, and they need a basketball team there, and I think it's going to be great for the league. And obviously Las Vegas is really, they went from not having any sports teams to
everything.
Now getting everything. So I think it'll be, and Las Vegas has been a kind of a hub for the NBA. They do the summer league there and having their owners meeting or whatever there coming up. So I mean, I think it's there are 2 cities that are going to really do well with the NBA.
I'm really interested to see how it's going to affect the schedule for the Pelicans in terms of how they're going to set up the divisions, how they're going to set up how many games you play against teams in your division and that kind of thing. But, I mean, going back to the initial reports where people have talked about how Minnesota or Memphis are going to be head to the East. I honestly never expected the Pelicans to be picked to go to the East because, I mean, specifically with the Timberwolves, I thought that they were the team that had the biggest case because I think they're the only team in the NBA that has only maybe one other team in their division that's in the same time zone as them. So if you think about it, like Portland is in their division and they're on the West Coast. So, I mean, travel-wise, they've been negatively affected for the entire time they've been in the NBA by where they are and what division they've been in. So I think it doesn't surprise me at all that the Pelicans don't seem to be even considered to be moving to the East.
Yeah, I'm the same, Jim. And I don't.
Yeah.
I think they'll. I mean, obviously the West has been stronger. These, but I think the Pelicans are. I think they'll be fine. I don't think people should say, "Oh, we want the Pelicans in the East because it's easier."
Doubt.
I mean,
I mean, when they first moved here, the East was strong and the West was terrible.
Can we keep the Pelicans in the West, but we'll move the Spurs and OKC to the East for the next 10 years, and then they can move back maybe later. But.
Or if the officiating can just call fouls on OKC, then that would make it even better. All right, Jim, let's get to your awards, man. We always love the doing. Who is our player of the week?
The player of the week I thought was a no-brainer, which is Dejounte Murray. He played in 2 of the 3 games that the Pelicans played over the last 7 days, averaged 31 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.5 steals, shot 68% from the field, 55% on three-pointers. I mean, to me, one of the things that stood out the most is after the Toronto game, I think James Borrego said that might have been the best game he's played since he's been in New Orleans. And then the game 2 nights later against Houston, he might have played even better. So, I mean, it's possible that he had his 2 best games in a Pelicans uniform during this last stretch. So really impressive. The player to watch over the next 7 days to me is Zion Williamson. He averaged 22.3 points over this last stretch, shooting 71% from the field. He started out 11 for 12 in the Dallas game before he missed his last shot there. And then part of why I picked Zion too is the opponents. They're playing against the Clippers twice. The Clippers are tied with OKC for the 3rd best record in the NBA since December 19th. So basically, since they flipped the season, they started out 6-21. And then on the weekend, the Pelicans are playing the Cavs, which to me is interesting for Zion because you're going up against Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen and just that big front court that it seems like they have some guys that they can match up with Zion.
I felt like Zion could have gone for 40 last night.
Yeah, I think so too. He was taking it to the basket and whatever he wanted to score, he could score. I mean, he was not missing anything. So, speaking of the Clippers game, I was thinking about before the season started, if the season had played out like I thought it was going to play out, I mean, this probably would have been like Chris Paul's like farewell in New Orleans, and I was all excited about this 2 game. They're playing the Clippers here twice, and obviously it didn't pan out that way, but it would have been a good time just to kind of get to reflect on Chris Paul's time here in New Orleans.
Which is a good time to go into some trending numbers with some of the games moving forward.
Indeed, and there's a similar theme here, I think, with both of these teams that they play the Clippers twice and then the Cavs. I mean, more drastically probably than what the Pelicans have gone through, but these are 2 teams that both got off to slow starts or relatively slow starts. The trending number for the Clippers is 28-13, and that's their record since they started out 6-21. So, I mean, 28-13 is half of a season. That's a 56-win pace by my math. So just to show you the turnaround that they've made. And then the trending number for the Cavs is 24-11. I kind of forgot about this, which is their record over the last 35 games. They were only 17-16 at one point, so which is really disappointing based on that they had, I think, the 2nd best record in the league last year, won 60+ games. So these are 2 teams that have really played a ton better over this last few months than compared to the way that they started the season.
Yeah, they got some interesting players on those teams, man. I'm excited to see because, again, those games against the Clippers have been close, and now you have them twice here at home.
Yeah, I mean, these are 3 games, but 2 teams. And the Pelicans, like I talked about earlier, they played really well at home recently, won 5 straight. So I think the fans are kind of starting to see this thing turn. And so the atmosphere is going to be great for all 3 games, I'd imagine. And so it's going to be a really good time for a team that has 23 wins, this is about as fun as it can get.
Interesting basketball, yeah.
Most teams can't say that with a 23-win team.
And I think as we record this Tuesday morning, we're hoping that Kawhi Leonard plays. We'd love to be able to see him. I'm not sure what his status is. He didn't play Monday night against the Spurs, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be out for a long time.
The graph says that's okay. He can miss 1 or 2.
Okay,
that's fine.
That's fine too. Just want to see full strength because I mean at this point in the season it's about evaluation, and so and obviously Dejounte Murray didn't play with illness, so hopefully he'll be back as well for all the games this week.
And would it be in back-to-back, maybe Kawhi won't play. I don't know. I mean, you never know how teams are going to handle these back-to-back situations.
So along those lines, as you mentioned, those are some pretty good teams. What's the spoiler scale?
The spoiler scale. I went with a 7. So to refresh people's memory, the spoiler scale is 1 to 10 scale. 1 is the game doesn't really matter that much for the other team. 10 is it's the last day of the season, and if you beat that team, you knock them out of the playoffs.
It's a real high level.
Yeah. So with the Clippers, I went with 7 on the spoiler scale. They're 8th in the West right now. They don't really have a great chance to move up from 8, but they're trying to hold off the Warriors and the Trailblazers to stay in that top half of the play-in bracket. So it's pretty significant, and obviously the fact that they play the Clippers twice makes it more important as well. So that I'm sure the Clippers are going to come in thinking we want to win both of these games, at least win one of them. And then lastly, for the Cavs, I went with a 6 on the spoiler scale. It's slightly above average to me in terms of what you can do damage-wise against the Cavs. Right now, Cleveland is 3 games ahead of 7th place. They're in 4th. They're 3 games ahead of 7th place Miami, so they're pretty comfortably in the top 6. And the Cavs are also 2.5 games behind 3rd place New York, so that's not that close either. So 6 for the spoiler scale with the Cavs.
There you go. Final thoughts?
I like the spoiler scale. I didn't even know what it was when I came in here.
I love it.
See, we got to have you. We got to have you on again.
I didn't know what it was, but I mean, I think that's a fair assessment of it. And again, I think the Pelicans, if they can win, I mean, obviously they're going to try to, they want to win all 3 of these games. If they can win 2 out of 3 of these games, I think that says a lot about where this team is.
Hey, bottom line, if you can get to where these games matter and you're excited to go rather than, we got a game tonight, I think that says a lot. Mr. Rod Walker, columnist for the New Orleans Advocate, Times-Picayune, at Rod Walker Nola is the way to go give a follow over on X and all other social media platforms. Man, that was a pleasure, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, for sure. We'll see you next time on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.